Welcome into this Thursday edition of PFT PM. It's technically the second time I've said this, as you'll hear coming up. What I'm doing is returning to the PFT PM studio for a supplemental edition of PFT PM that's going to get stapled onto the one that I already did before we got the Sunday ticket verdict. And as you'll hear, I was bracing for the possibility that the verdict was going to come during the taping of PFT PM. It didn't. It came just minutes after the conclusion of the taping of PFT PM. And I'm laughing just because I think it's funny. I don't think the NFL thinks it's funny because the verdict, folks, in the class action lawsuit against the National Football League alleging price fixing in violation of the federal antitrust laws as it relates to the cost of Sunday ticket. Remember, making the price higher than it needed to be so that consumers would choose to just stick with the CBS and Fox games they were getting in their local area. Let's protect our relationship with CBS and Fox by making Sunday tickets so expensive that people will be more likely to not get it. That ends up being, in the opinion of the jury, a violation of the antitrust laws. And Megan Cuniff has been all over this, freelance journalist. And this is where, as you'll hear coming up, I'm not going to get into what we already talked about, but we saw a tweet from her that suggested this was not going well for the NFL because basically the jury was asking for a calculator. The jury wanted information that would help it ultimately determine the damages to be paid. Here is the ultimate number. The jury ordered the NFL to pay $96 million in damages to the commercial establishments that were in this massive class action of 2.4 million plaintiffs and $4 billion to the residential class, the folks like you and me who have been paying for Sunday ticket for years at a rate higher than under the antitrust laws as interpreted, applied, and enforced by this jury it should have been. So that's $4 billion. 4.096 billion is the verdict. And under the antitrust laws, you know what happens? Gets tripled. So that's about 12.3 billion that the NFL is going to have to pay, assuming this verdict is upheld. So let that sink in. 12.3 billion. More than most teams would sell for right now. The Cowboys would probably sell for more than that if they were for sale, but the NFL basically has to buy at a very high rate a 33rd franchise to pay off this verdict if the NFL ultimately has to do it. There's no guarantee the NFL will have to do it. Remember, the judge has in his back pocket the NFL's motion for judgment as a matter of law. Judge hadn't ruled on it yet. Judge could take this all away. In one fell swoop, it could be gone. The judge could say there's not sufficient evidence to support a jury verdict on liability. The plaintiffs get nothing. Now, I wrote about this earlier today. How do you get to the point where a jury finds against the NFL and the judge finds that no reasonable jury could find for the NFL? Does that mean the jury isn't reasonable? No, it just means the jury was influenced by things other than it should have been. The jury thought the NFL did something wrong, but there wasn't enough evidence when you look at the technical legal requirements, the way that you basically have to build your case. It's like getting one of those Lego sets. There's an ornate way to put the case together, to put the model together. And if the plaintiffs didn't get the right evidence in to prove the case, then there isn't enough evidence that would support a reasonable jury verdict that the plaintiffs should win. That could happen. Whatever happens next, this is destined to be appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals because we have a verdict, the jury has spoken. So the first question is, does the law circumvent what the jury did? The judge is going to take that up. Then once the judge rules on the NFL's motion for judgment as a matter of law, it goes to the Ninth Circuit. Everybody who loses in the federal district court system has the automatic right to appeal to the next level up. There are 11, 12, 13 circuits, federal circuits in the country. California's in the 9th. After that, there's no automatic right to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. You have to convince the U.S. Supreme Court to take the case. There's about 100 to 150 cases taken every year of more than 7,000 petitions that are submitted. So there's no guarantee that if the NFL loses in the Ninth Circuit, the NFL is going to get into the Supreme Court. We've joked in the past about the Super Bowl ring that Jerry Jones once gave to Clarence Thomas. That might be a vote. 4 of the 9 justices have to vote to take up the case. And then once the case is in the Supreme Court, 5 of the 9 have to vote in favor of the prevailing side. So the first challenge will be Ninth Circuit. What does the Ninth Circuit do? And then after that, especially if the NFL loses, I guarantee you, and with this much money at issue, whoever loses at the Ninth Circuit is going to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. There's too much money now. It's one thing for the plaintiff to, if it's $1 million verdict, how far do you want to push this? How much more money do you want to spend? When you got $12 billion in hand, you take it all the way to the highest court in the land to try to make that $12 billion. And who knows, maybe it'll settle at this point. And the one thing that we all need to hope for as consumers and fans of the NFL, that this is the wake-up call to the NFL, that 30 years of doing it this way is enough. It's over. The game is ended. It's time to start making Sunday Ticket available at a cheaper price for the full package and options including single team, single weekend, single game. Whatever the consumer wants. Give the consumer real choice, not at a markup. Real choice, real options to watch any games they want, either as part of their cable package, like the NFL considered back in 2017, or you buy it but you don't have to spend $389 for the full season or $449 or more to watch the full year of Sunday Ticket or have access to the full year of Sunday Ticket because all you want to see is Buccaneers games if you live in Topeka, Kansas. I think that's all I have to say about that for now. What I'm going to do is hand off to myself as we get into the Thursday PFT PM as previously recorded, but not recorded all that long ago because it was right after the verdict. We came down to do this part. So stay tuned. Literally, here we go right now, the rest of Thursday's PFT PM. Thursday edition of PFT PM. We are on verdict watch. It could come at any time. It could come while I'm taping this. I kind of hope it doesn't. I'd like to have a chance to digest it and react to it, not in real time, not as I'm scrolling through Twitter and trying to make sense of whatever the outcome may be. And as a practical matter, it's 3:22 p.m. Eastern right now. I have to stop at 4. If word gets out that a verdict is completed, there's a good chance we might not even know what it is until after 4 o'clock Eastern anyway. So we're just going to go forward under the assumption there is no verdict, which of course means there will be. I want to start with something that I wrote earlier today, and I should have known what this would do. Chiefs fans had no reason to be upset with me this week. When I did our pre-training camp power rankings, I had made the Chiefs number 1. And how it goes in these parts is pretty simple. If you say something that they like, they never say a word. If you say something they don't like, they get pissed off. And they means the fans of any team. You make my team number 1, okay, fine. As natural as breathing. No reaction, no response, no right on, no thank you, no whatever. And that's fine. But if you rank a team too low, you're going to hear about it. As I heard about it, mainly from Jets fans, but fans of other teams that weren't put as high as their fan base assumed they were, as high as their fan base has deluded themselves into thinking the team should be, they got pissed. Well, Chiefs fans are pissed off now too, because I went there. I dared to ponder a future that entails Patrick Mahomes not playing quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. It will happen one of these days. It's guaranteed. Just like we all shall perish, one of these days, Patrick Mahomes will not be the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs. And I went there for 2 different reasons. Well, three in all. One, he turns 29 on September 17 of this year, which means he's getting closer and closer to 30. And when a quarterback turns 30 is when people start asking, how long are you going to play? Well, this guy is the best player in the NFL by far, frankly, in my mind, more valuable to the league and his team than any player in football. And by value, I mean the amount of money he brings to the table, the amount of attention, the amount of positivity that he generates for his team and for the league. He should be making $100 million a year, not 45 million or whatever the number is. And they messed with the cash flow last year to make it better, to make him the highest paid over the next 4 years on average. He should be getting 100 million a year. He is the most popular, the most skilled, the best representative that the league could ever want of the Shield. But he's not going to be playing for the NFL or the Chiefs forever. And so 30 next September. So the questions are going to come. I mean, for a long time, Tom Brady got those questions and said he's going to play 10 more years. I'm going to play 10 more years. I'm going to play 10 more years. And I think it was 10 years later that he started focusing on 30 or 45, as his expiration date. And others have said 45. Russell Wilson aspires to play until he's 45. I don't know that anyone's going to want him to play for them much beyond 35, the way his career has gone recently. This year is going to be critical to even having an interest in his services beyond his 40th birthday, if even at his 40th birthday. So the question becomes natural. Second, I was looking for stuff to post because if you haven't noticed, it's slow right now. And I found an item on marca.com. And one of the writers at PFT said, what the hell is marca.com? It is the website of a Spanish tabloid that focuses on sports. And they had a blurb about something Randy Mahomes, the mother of Patrick Mahomes, said on a podcast about the possibility that he won't play as long as Tom Brady did. And the thing that would keep him from doing it is if his family ever needs him, he won't play. Possibly want to be around for his kids, go to their activities, their sporting events, etc. If the family balance is out of whack, then Mahomes might say, I'm done. Now, it's easy to say that in the vacuum. The idea of giving up your football career when you are the most famous, most popular, most skilled player currently in the game, that's not easy to do. One thing that would help him get there is if he would catch Tom Brady and maybe pass him in Super Bowl wins. He gets to 7 or 8, nothing more to prove, move on. That's what Giselle wanted Tom Brady to do when he got to 5 Super Bowl wins, courtesy of the 28-3 comeback against the Falcons in the year that he was suspended 4 games. I remember saying, hey, this is perfect opportunity. You walk up to Roger Goodell and you put the Lombardi trophy in his stomach and you say, a la Paul Crewe to the warden in The Longest Yard, put this in your trophy case and just walk off into the sunset. I could see Mahomes being willing to do that, more willing to do that than Brady ever was. Of course, it's easy to say that now. It's like the idea that, and I still remember this, Stats, when he was involved in the program, told me the story of how his mother's attitude toward aging is she wants to die at 80 and out. And I've kind of gotten there myself because weird things happen once you get on the wrong side of 80 and it's hard to hold it together and you feel like you become a burden on your family and can you live independently and is it really worth it? And I've suggested buying a Ferrari and driving at full speed into the ravine behind my house on my 80th birthday. It sounds good now. It might sound differently on 79 and 364 days. So the idea of Patrick Mahomes walking away now, if he gets to 7 or 8, okay. When he gets to 7 or 8, the reaction might be, how about 9? How about 10? I want to keep going. And I think one of the things he's going to be able to do is play at a high level without being completely and totally obsessed like Tom Brady was, because Patrick Mahomes has more natural skills than Tom Brady ever had. Yes, Tom Brady was blessed with a great arm, and he worked his ass off to make it better and better. One of the things that Mahomes is trying to do is get to the point where, like Brady and other great quarterbacks, as they get older, nothing fools him. He walks up the line of scrimmage. He knows exactly what's going to happen. He doesn't need to run around with his hair on fire and make some spectacular throw at a time when it feels like the play is destined to become a disaster. He's going to know where to make that throw, how to make that throw, when to make that throw before the ball's even in his hands. As Patrick Mahomes gets to that point, can he better balance work and family and still do both without undermining the requirements of being properly prepared and present for his teammates? Is there a way to be ready and effective while still giving extra time to your family as your children? He's got 2 now. As they get older, he spends a lot of time in the offseason working out with his receivers, brings them all to Texas. They spend a lot of time together. And look, I don't know if you would total up the full hours over the course of the year that get devoted to football and compare it to other professions, when you consider the fact that there's a lot of downtime where there's not practices or games. Now, maybe Patrick Mahomes fills all those up, all those days up, all those weeks up with football work. But it would be interesting to see how many raw hours, on average, over the course of a full year, get devoted to football by the best of the best quarterbacks and other best of the best players, and compare it to how many hours a surgeon, a lawyer, a coach, others who aren't actually playing the game, other professions, how much of your time you're actually spending. Because for the players, you do it until you're 40, if you're lucky, 45, if you're very lucky enough to still be good enough that the team wants you and your body can continue to allow you to do it. For a lawyer who has a full career, you're going into your 50s. Most lawyers don't even hit their peak until their mid-50s. Go into your 60s, go into your 70s. So I remember when Tom Brady was going through his issue in 2022, where he left training camp for a while and it felt like everything was coming to a head because maybe he should have retired after the 2021 season. Maybe when he did retire, he should have stayed retired. You throw on top of that the fact that he and Sean Payton were trying to angle for a path to Miami that maybe Mrs. Brady didn't know about. A lot of issues there that kind of made everything get out of whack. But I remember saying, this is really unprecedented from the standpoint of a quarterback, a player who has been around so long. His family has matured to the point where there are a lot of things going on for teenagers. There's a lot of stuff. You know, the demands of 3, 4, and 5 are different than the demands of 13, 14, and 15. And Patrick Mahomes is going to be there if he plays another 10, 12 years. And he and his wife may have more kids, and the more kids you have, the more time you need to devote to your family in order to feel like you're doing it right. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And the other thing too, they've got these Coors Light commercials they do where they kind of wink, nod their way around the prohibition against NFL players being involved in beer commercials. The latest Coors Light gimmick. Remember, they had a Coors Light flashlight, and then there was something with a Coors Light bear, Coors Bear. I can't remember what it was. It was something that was a very flimsy effort to conceal the fact that Patrick Mahomes has a deal with Coors Light. This one is whatever commercial they're doing now is getting put in a time capsule until he retires. So that's just another tangible reason for people to ask the question, when are we going to see the Coors Light commercial? So don't get mad at me, Chiefs fans, for pointing out that thing that you know is coming. It's in the back of your mind. It's lurking. You think about it more than you want to. You know that there's a day when the party will end. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we shall die. There is a tomorrow that involves Patrick Mahomes not playing football for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm sorry. Sorry to point out reality. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Patrick Mahomes will not become frozen in time and be the quarterback of the Chiefs forever. There will be no AI quarterback version of Patrick Mahomes that continues to run the show in Kansas City for the next 1,000 years. That leads to the next topic. I saw this yesterday and I thought it was something from The Onion at first. Is The Onion even still around? I don't know. That makes it even harder to know what is or isn't from The Onion, because the threshold question of is there still such a thing as The Onion is something I can't easily answer. Al Michaels, AI Al, artificial intelligence voice will be used for highlights every day of the upcoming Olympics on Peacock. And look, does the fact that PFT Live is on Peacock and Peacock is part of NBC and PFT is part of NBC, did that make me more likely to write about it? Yeah. But still, I think it's significant. One of the most recognizable voices in all of broadcasting, who's been tied to the NFL for decades. He is the first prominent person, and he's extremely prominent, to lend his voice for AI purposes to the generation of narration that is going to accompany highlights that are curated probably by AI as well of each day of the Olympics. And I was on The Score earlier today in Chicago, and they raised a hell of a question. Now I'm going to put this on Twitter. Would you watch an alternate broadcast of an NFL game that had AI, Pat Summerall, and John Madden? I would. I sure would. Especially if it worked, especially if it was good. Especially if they were able to harness that voice and couple it with real-time generation of calls of the game and analysis of the game that would seem like it was actually coming from Pat Summerall and John Madden. And I don't know how close AI is to doing that, but you kind of get the feeling we're not that far away from it. I mean, every technological advancement we've ever seen keeps getting better and better and better over time. The AI will get better and better and better over time. So you tune in Monday Night Football, you've got Aikman and Buck, you've got the Manning cast, and you've got Summerall and Madden AI. As much as I don't like the concept of AI rendering jobs performed by human beings obsolete, I mean, hell, I spend a lot of time generating fiction as I try to craft this other hobby to supplement the thing that was a hobby that became my full-time job. And I've written 8 manuscripts over the last 4 years. AI could probably write 8 manuscripts in 8 blinks of an eye. Remember the episode of The Office where Dwight was going against the computer, trying to sell more paper than the computer, and Jim was taunting Dwight as the computer about all the things that the computer was able to do while Dwight was selling a ream of paper. So part of the challenge is going to be to get people to adapt. And I see AI more and more places now. They're using some clunky version of it on X that is curating whatever the top stories are, whatever would be trending is turned into a little mini article. It's going to pop up in more and more places. Its success will depend upon whether to what extent the humans consume it. Because the one thing AI can't do is consume itself, although maybe that is coming as well. I don't know. AI eventually is going to do everything, and the humans are just going to sit around in their pajamas all day, eating ice cream and consuming the products of AI. AI TV scripts performed by AI actors with AI animation, AI movies, AI music. How much are we going to embrace it? Well, if you give me Pat Summerall and John Madden, maybe I will. And it makes me wonder what the equivalence would be in other fields that would get someone to say, I really don't like AI, but you got AI Bruce Springsteen. There was an AI George Carlin routine that was available a few months ago, and it got shut down with legal threats and whatnot, but I was listening to it. It sounded pretty damn real. and it was pretty good, and it was new content. How about AI Seinfeld episodes that would take into account all the things that have changed in the years since Seinfeld went off the air? That'd be pretty good. And I guess what they could do is use AI to generate, almost like what the NFL does with the schedule. You generate a bunch of different options and you wade through them. The humans wade through the product of the AI and decide, we'll use this, we'll use this, we'll use this, we'll use this. We'll not use that, we'll not use that, we'll not use that, we'll not use that. But again, back to my point, with Summerall and Madden, I'd be interested. And then it would become strange because, all right, I'm watching the Summerall and Madden version of all these games. What happens when the people like me who were into Summerall and Madden when they were younger, we die? If everyone's listening to AI-generated voices of people who called the games from their youth, who becomes the next human voice that people will want to hear deeper into the future? Or will it just be the next generation gets hooked on AI Summerall and Madden, and it's just AI Summerall and Madden indefinitely, and their families being compensated as they should be for the use of those voices? But still, it's not going to cost nearly as much. Whatever it costs, it ain't going to cost $37.5 million a year like Tom Brady does. They have Tom Brady AI for years to come. So anyway, I am not a fan of the technology. I don't like what it could potentially do to the humans that created it and the humans that didn't. But give me Pat Summerall and John Madden on a call, I don't know. And I assume that, you know, it would be sufficiently detailed and specific that it won't be like when you used to play the old Madden game and it was pull string catchphrases. He'll fill that in the morning. He'll fill that one in the morning, whatever that was. There were just like 4 or 5 lines. It would be specific and it'd be tailored to whatever is happening on the field at that moment. Anyway, we'll see how people react to the Al Michaels AI. I've seen some reaction on Twitter. Of course, Twitter isn't the most reliable device to determine what the public mood is on anything, because Twitter is like Mikey in the old Life cereal commercial. He won't eat it. He hates everything. Hey, Mikey, he likes it. If there's ever something X likes, then I think we know that that must be a good thing. A lot of people like the idea of the new kickoff formation. I said several weeks ago that my prediction is by the trade deadline, half of the league's head coaches will have decided, screw this, I'm just kicking it out of the end zone. You can have the 30. What's the difference between the 30 and the 25? I've thought about it some more, and I've talked to some other people about it this week. And I've got 2 other thoughts in this regard. Here's one. John Fossil apparently said back during the league meetings, and I'm going to track down this quote. Shereen Williams told me about this, that when they studied the XFL model, they decided that the average field position, by embracing this new formation that is based on the XFL kickoff with one major twist, the other players can all move if the ball strikes the ground but isn't yet touched by the return specialist. If it strikes the ground, the NFL team amassed at the 40 can start going, and the other players in position to try to block the coverage men can move as well if it just hits the ground. It's still basically the same play. It's the electric football play where everyone is, for those of you listening, I'm trying to strike the position of one of those. They'd have the different electric football positions. I'm doing all the ones I remember. You got running back, you got the blockers and kids. There was a time where this is how you had to block with your arms like this. You couldn't extend your hands. You had to block like that. Made it hard to run an offense when you had to block with your fists at your chin and your elbows out, and you just had to kind of move around like that. That's one of the electric football figures. Then there's the guy who's standing up with his hands down and out, kind of like I would use that guy as the quarterback, the free safety, or like a flanker. Then there was the guy who was kind of hunched he didn't have he was a lineman, but he had his arms down and he was kind of hunched over. And then there was that's the first one I did, kind of the receiver in sprinter formation, but not full blown, just kind of casual lean with one arm out and one arm back. Anyway, that's what they all seem like to me as we're waiting for the play to start. That's what the XFL did. The UFL didn't incorporate it foolishly. More people would have been interested in the UFL this year if it would have been a chance to see how the new NFL kickoff is ultimately going to play out. We're going to find out when the season starts. And when it starts, I was mentioning average field position of the 28 or the 29. Did I mention that? That's what John Fossil said. They determined when they looked at the XFL, I didn't finish my point, I believe, that the average field position they expect to be the 28 or the 29. Why not give the extra yard then and avoid playing Russian roulette with your career? Because that's what you're doing as a head coach. If you allow these return specialists to bust through that first line, you got 10 guys across without a great opportunity to create walls and layers. You get through one gap and that 10 across, like Red Rover, you bust through, you're gone. You're going to pin your career on that? When the average field position is going to be the 28 or the 29, just take the 30. Take the 30 and be done with it. I think a lot of coaches, especially defensive coaches, are going to feel that way. Take the 30 and be done with it. And I said half the league by the trade deadline. It could be that a lot of the league right out of the gate says, screw this. I'm not going to be the guinea pig. I don't know how this is going to go. Until I have a better sense of how this is going to go, until we can develop some analytics about this, I'm kicking this thing out of the end zone. Period. Gone. Take the 30. That's the rule change. You know what the rule change is? The drive starts at the 30 instead of the 25. That's the rule change. Not all this other stuff that everybody's anticipating. Now, when you start drives at the 30, you are more likely to have more points scored. That extra 5 yards on average, starting the drive in that spot, you only need 70 yards for a touchdown. You need, depending upon who your kicker is, what do you need? 15? 20? You need more than 20. 25? 45-yard line of the opponent is a 62-yard field goal. That's 25 yards gained before you're in a position for a long field goal. And we're seeing more and more kickers make 60-plus yard field goals. The guy that the Lions signed from the Michigan Panthers, Jake Bates, he made 3 60-plus yard field goals this year in the stadium where the Lions play their home games. So I think you're going to have, yes, more teams giving up the 30, but that will still have an impact on scoring. And that's ultimately what the NFL wants to do. They want to bring back from the dead the kickoff. They'd love to do that. But if they fail, at least drives start closer to the end zone and or field goal range, more points will eventually be scored. So maybe it'll be half the league right out of the gates saying, yeah, you know what? We're not comfortable doing this until we know more about it. I'm not going to risk losing a game in week 1 that is going to come back and cause me to lose a tiebreaker after week 18. I'm just not comfortable doing that. It's my job that's on the line, not yours, fans that want to see this XFL electric football style play. So interesting to see. And preseason may give people a chance to experiment. It may be just enough that a coach says, screw this, I'm not doing it. So who knows how big of a change is actually going to be made here. I think at the end of the day, could be a lot of these kickoffs, just like before, dead play. And it all comes down to the fact that when they went to the league meetings in Florida this year, the proposal was to put the ball at the 35 if the kickoff is out of the end zone. Along the way to the vote, the 35 got moved to the 30, which I think is going to change everything. Because if you're giving up the 35, that's a lot to give up. If the average field position is going to be the 28, 29, 35 is a lot to give up. They may ultimately have to just make the 35 or the 40. Right now, if the ball goes out of bounds, it's the 40. If it's short of the landing zone from the 20 to the goal line, it goes to the 40. Maybe it just needs to be 40 across the board. If it's 40 across the board, you're rarely going to see anybody kicking it out of bounds or kicking it out of the end zone deliberately. Rarely, if ever. 35, it's not going to happen very often. 30, I guess my point is this. I don't think much is going to change. I've had a chance to really think it through and talk it through with some people who know. The change may not be as dramatic as we think it's going to be once the coaches have a chance to understand what the ramifications are. All right, let's answer a few questions as we continue on verdict watch. I've yet to get any indication here. Let me see. Oh, we got some. Oh, no, what do we got here? What do we got? Nothing. I thought maybe we would have verdict watch. No verdict watch. What else do we have? There's something here that Kristen Coleman sent me. She's the one who's putting all this together today. She texted me that a freelance journalist, Megan Cuniff, has posted that jurors have asked for statistics not in evidence. The number of NFL Sunday Ticket subscribers per year and the price that each one paid. The judge said this sounds like the astrophysicist juror is trying to come up with his own damages model. Overall, not a good sign for the NFL regarding antitrust liability. Now, this is interesting. I'm glad I saw that. Christian, thank you for sending that. I said yesterday in something we posted, the difference between a criminal trial and a civil trial when it's time for the jury to deliberate. It's very simple. In a criminal trial, innocent or guilty. That's it. Civil trial, first the question is, did the defendant do it? Then the question is, okay, if the defendant's responsible, what are the damages? So the longer the jury's out, typically the better it is for the plaintiff. A quick verdict means they've resolved the question. Defendant didn't do anything wrong. Let's all go home. That's why when I would try cases, and I tried more representing individuals than I did representing institutions. If you represent the institution that gets sued, like in a wrongful discharge case, you want to hear that knock on the door quickly. And after a few hours, you start getting a little nervous and your stomach, you start to get that feeling. And the longer it goes on, you got a problem. And we actually, when I was practicing at a firm that catered to employers and business interests before I went out on my own, we would do a series of seminars that was aimed at marketing our services to the various decision makers who have control of the budget and have the discretion to decide who's going to be hired to handle the legal issues that a company or an institution may otherwise have. And one of the seminars, or the actual entire program, was called When the Jury Asks for a Calculator. Yeah, that's never a good sign. And that was something that lawyers would always kind of, if the jury ever asks for a calculator, you're screwed if you're representing the defendant. This is the equivalent of the jury asking for a calculator. When they want information that seemingly would allow them to come up with their own calculations, that's not good for the defense. What is good, though, if they latch on to some formula that is not supported by the evidence, that gets thrown out. And you could get a new trial just on the issue of damages, or the judge could take whatever the damage award is and carve it down to something else that is supported by the evidence. So it's bad news for the NFL, but it's good news that it looks like maybe they're going rogue here on damages, and it might be a number, it might be a methodology that isn't supported by the evidence because they want to come up with their own thing. Number of NFL Sunday Ticket subscribers per year and the price that each one paid. That's the see, and the judge chided the plaintiff's lawyers for overcomplicating the case. Isn't that really what the damages would be? What did you pay each year that you had it? Here's what maybe you should have paid. Here's what you did pay. The difference is what we're going to make the damages. It's going to be fascinating. And as surmised by the reporter, it's not good news for the NFL. Not good news at all. With that background, let's take a look at some of these questions. Some of them may be moot based upon what that development currently is, especially now that I always hate having to do this, having to think things through in real time without the chance to ponder. But I think we got to the good place here. Bad news for the NFL, but could be good news because it could be the jury's going rogue on the issue of damages, which could lead to more legal proceedings and issues and questions and appeals and whatnot. In this case, which has been around for 9 years, could be around not quite 9 more, but maybe closer to 9 than 0. Okay. PFT PM policy. Seems like none of these things ever make a blip on the radars of casual NFL fans or anybody that matters. How is this any different? Will it make a difference now? Will it make a difference in 10 years when the legal process finally concludes? Or will it have all changed by then? I think the biggest thing is, and I tried to touch on this today, even if the jury whacks the NFL and the judge says, I'm directing a verdict for the NFL because I believe that no reasonable jury could have found, based upon these facts, that the specific requirements of the antitrust laws that were at issue here were violated. You still don't get a jury verdict in that instance unless the jury is pissed off at something the NFL did. Even if the NFL ultimately technically didn't violate the law, they didn't like what the NFL did, so they found against them. I hope that prompts some self-awareness and some soul-searching by the league where they say, you know what, maybe we shouldn't charge $389 for the full Sunday ticket package if you're already paying $72.99 a month to YouTube TV. Maybe it shouldn't be $449 if you're not already a YouTube TV customer. Maybe we should come up with a better option. Maybe we will. Whether it's to prevent another antitrust lawsuit that might be better crafted than this one was, or it's just not the right thing to do. Football is family, baloney. Football is money. And football is making as much money as possible, not giving the consumers maximum choices. And I haven't gotten any pushback from the NFL yet. I think they know. I think they know. And it's one of those things where they've probably known from the get-go that this was a potential problem, that this was something that was going to blow up in their faces at some point. But 30 years later, here we are. The reckoning is coming 3 decades after they started this program that potentially has been an antitrust violation from its inception. That's why the memo that was highlighted for the jury yesterday, and what happens in a complicated civil case, you've got evidence, you've got exhibits, you've got a lot of stuff happening. Unless someone is there paying attention to all of it, you really don't have a full understanding of what's going to be presented to the jury at closing argument. Because what happens at closing argument, and the goal for the lawyer, I need to get all my evidence in so I have what I need when it's time to go to the jury and say, this is why I should win. This is why my client prevails. And one of the documents that was shown to the jury yesterday that wasn't noticed by whoever was covering the trial when the evidence came in, a memo from the league in 2017, an internal memo where they discussed the possibility of putting out-of-market games on cable channels like FS1 and the Ocho and the Hallmark Channel, who knows? But all the games would have been available to you as a cable consumer on the existing cable platform, so you don't have to buy Sunday ticket at all. They considered that in 2017. 2 years after, the lawsuit that became this trial that is now jury deliberations, it could be a verdict against the NFL, was even filed. So will this be the thing that gets them to say, there's got to be a better way to do this? And maybe we can actually make more money. Oh, yeah, you know what? CBS and Fox might be upset, but the thing that drives the bus for them is the late afternoon windows they get every other week that gets 30 million people. So you've got your early window that's made available over-the-air free broadcast TV in the local market, typically featuring the local team. But if the local team's playing at night or off that week, it'll be some other game. But then all the other games are going to be otherwise available to consumers at less than $389 or $449 or whatever the number is. Don't tell anybody, I did cancel my Sunday ticket plus Red Zone. I got the email last week, $389 renewal as of August 5. So I canceled. And the instant message was, we're still here for $389 if you change your mind. And I figured they would be. You know, why not cancel? What are they going to do? They're going to make it more expensive? If you cancel at the rate they're already going to charge you, they're not going to make it more expensive. Now, if they had said to me it's $389 by August 5, if you cancel before then and you come back, it's going to be $449 or $489, then that's a different analysis. So maybe I'll choose to come back, or maybe they'll lure me back before August 5. with some sort of inducement. I've heard from at least one other person who canceled and ended up being offered the package at $100 less than what the price was that this person has been quoted. So what does it hurt? Sorry, if I'm not back tomorrow, this is why. If I end up dead, this is why. All right. Cousin Vin, in the event the NFL has to pay, would they make the teams do it or would they actually pay themselves? It's a fair question because a lot of people don't understand how this really works. Here's how this works. The NFL is the teams. The NFL would pay the money and then the teams would contribute 1/32 of the amount each. The teams are paying this. And so it makes a massive verdict less than it would be. Look at the concussion settlement. Whatever that number was, you divide it by 32 and it's a hell of a lot less than it was. So it gets divided 32 ways. Let's see. Dog, what are the chances they just let fans select one team to watch? We may be moving there. ESPN wanted to do it as part of the Sunday ticket package. We may be headed in that direction where the NFL says after 30 years of gouging fans for the full all or nothing, even though they market it as, if you're a displaced Saints fan in Green Bay, this is the way to watch your Saints games. Yeah, oh, by the way, you got to buy all the other out-of-market games too, not just the ones you want to watch. Maybe they're finally going to do the right thing. And, I said early on we should all be rooting for the NFL to lose this case. I don't care if the NFL loses. I hope the NFL wakes up and realizes this is wrong. What we're doing is not fair to the consumer. It's baloney to stand up and say to the jury, this is all about choice. It's about choice at a certain price. It's about a choice at a price that's so high, we know you'll choose not to do it. That's not a real choice. That's not a real choice. There's a lot more here. But I have to go. I'm just looking to see if there's one more. Jake McCain. What was the reason the NFL received the antitrust exemption back in the day? Does that reasoning still apply? It was a political maneuver that the NFL engaged in 1961, the Sports Broadcasting Act, that allows pro teams to come together as one unit to market their TV rights as a group. The NFL was all in for that, even though there were some teams that were viewed as more desirable and valuable than other teams. Right now, it's the Cowboys and pretty much everybody else. Cowboys, if you had to sell your own rights, would get a lot more than any other teams. Now, the real flaw for the NFL was in the construction of the league. It should have been set up as one entity. And then within the confines of one entity, you sell off different pieces and interests. You don't have independent businesses. The reason the NFL has to worry about antitrust liability is it was set up as independent businesses, not as a single unitary company like the MLS is and the UFL is. The newer sports leagues have learned how the rest of them screwed up. And I guess this falls into good problem to have category because as these sports leagues got started, nobody expected them to become what they are. Nobody expected the NBA, MLB, NFL, NHL to become the things they are. They screwed up. They didn't know. They slapped it together the way that it was. They were struggling to make money. Having to worry about massive antitrust liability is the ultimate first world problem. You've got a business that is kicking ass if you have to worry about those things. But in hindsight, would have been better to have one entity. Then you don't need an antitrust exemption. And you don't get sued for doing what the NFL did here, allegedly, actually, whatever, gouging the fans as to what it would cost to watch Sunday tickets so that they'll choose not to do it and they'll watch whatever games are available on CBS or Fox instead. I got to run. Thanks as always for some of your time. We will do this again tomorrow. Maybe we'll have a verdict tomorrow. And depending upon when a verdict comes in today, maybe you'll hear me again. We'll find out. Check us out around the clock for all updates at profootballtalk.com. Thanks as always for some of your time. We'll see you again real soon. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.